Hello friends and fellow flight simmers, welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator and much delayed third part of the Airbus A320 full flight tutorial. We are currently cruising at flight level 360 and en route to Los Angeles International Airport. We'll jump into the cockpit, we will discuss a couple things, and I will bring you guys back when we are ready to start our descent. Alright, currently we are approaching Colts waypoint, 5 miles away from it, and if we look down to the FMC, if you haven't entered your destination data, which I haven't, the MCDU will warn you with an orange text saying enter destination data. Not sure if it's going to be visible at 200 miles. I'm not sure how it's calculated, so don't quote me on that, but you'll see it if you haven't entered it. To avoid that, we will enter our arrival and approach into the MCDU. And just a couple things to remember from last episode. On the tablet we are tracking our altitude and the target, and it tells us that we need to start descending 82 miles before our target waypoint, and that target waypoint we track on the MCDU under progress page. Crane, if you remember the last episode, is where we want to be at 10,000, and we have 200 miles to Crane, so we are way away from our top of descent based off of this calculation. So to get ready for it, first thing we need to do is enter our destination by selecting our destination airport, arrival, and we will be doing an ILS to runway 25 left. That's going to be via Hollywood 1 arrival, if you remember, and our transition is Siwu, if you remember from the last episode. And how we read it is from right to left, as we discussed before. Hollywood 1 arrival with an eastward transition into arrival via Siwu transition into the approach. So this transition is for our transition into the star, and that transition or via is our transition or last waypoint of the star, where our approach starts. So don't confuse this with this transition. Let's insert this and we will discuss this on Navigraph. Couple things we need to do when we are getting ready to descent is to go and fill the performance page for descent and approach. So we have some restrictions and we will try out if we can set a pre-selected speed of 280 knots, but we will manage that speed ourselves if need be. And we need to fill this approach information based on our approach plate or approach chart when we get close. Other than that, we are on a stable flight, 36,000 feet as seen on the PFD, standard barometric pressure, and we are at Mach units for the speed. About 29,000 feet you need to switch, remember. Auto thrust autopilot is on, and aircraft is on a managed navigation and speed mode and heading mode as well. Nothing crazy here, everything is as default. Our ignition selector switch is at normal, engines are running, throttle is at climb detent but managed by the autopilot, and that's it for now until we are ready to descend. Just wanted to put this quick recap of the last part and discuss a couple things before it's too late, and I didn't want to rush it, but this is how we are going to cruise until our top of descent, and we will discuss more when we get there. I will cut the video here and bring you guys back when we are ready to do it. See you in a little bit. Welcome back, friends. We are getting close to our top of descent. We are about 30 miles to our top of descent based on the information we have on the EFB and the progress page. Let's jump into the cockpit and use this time to do some extra work so that we can stay ahead of the game. First thing first, we'll go down and check our progress page. It says enter destination data. So this is here because we have our arrival selected, but we haven't done the performance page for our approach. Okay, this is the destination data we need to enter. We will do this, but let's talk about progress page. We have 28 miles, 26 miles to crane, and I'm sorry, 26 miles to our top of descent, which is 82 miles to crane according to the EFB, as you see here. Let's use this time to do our approach briefing, or descent briefing. Descent, we can do this couple ways. As you see here, we have a couple restrictions all the way to our transition waypoint Cebu. The first way you can do is you can set the altitude and do an open descent with selecting your vertical speed. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is leaving it to the aircraft and do a managed descent, what we will do in this flight. We have a below flight level 320 restriction here, and we have to stay above flight level 240 until we pass Brune. So our descent plan is to first descend to 24,000 and then descend to 19,000 so that we don't breach these restrictions, and when we hit 19,000 at Avatar or Aviator, whatever waypoint is this, we will set for 10,000 at Crane, and the aircraft should follow the restrictions accordingly. This is to make sure we are not going to breach these two, because there is quite a bit of distance and altitude to lose between these waypoints. We also need to select a speed of 280 by going to selected speed and stay at 280 and then 270 at Cebu. So that is the plan. Let's set our altitude for 24 first. Let's go check the progress page one more time. 96 miles. In the meantime, we can get the METAR report for Los Angeles. Let's make a weather request, send this, and we will enter the destination data after starting our descent, and I'll talk about what we need to enter there. And the METAR is one of the things that we will need for that page. We are waiting to see a company message here, which we just saw. That tells us that we have a message in the MCDU that we can go and see. Received messages, METAR. This is the information as of now. We can print this for ease of use. Take a look at the printer. It's coming out. And we can tear this and place right there in front of us. Let's go and check the progress page one more time. 90 miles to our crane and 82 miles is our top of descent. We can start the descent a little bit early, no worries and no problems there, but it's up to you to stay ahead of the game, especially when you are getting used to this aircraft. I highly recommend to do things a little bit earlier to give yourself enough time to tackle the other stuff. While we are waiting, because it's not gonna hurt anything, let's go to the performance page and fill our information. It's asking for the QNH. I'm sorry, the view is not that great because of the sun, but the QNH is here, 3006 at KLAX. So 30.06, that's what we plug in here. Temperature, as you see here, is 21 degrees. We'll enter that. Winds are coming from 250 at 6 knots, 250.06 knots. Our transition altitude is 18,000 feet for our approach. And then the one important thing, actually two important things, is the minimums and then the landing configuration. Our minimums for our approach, as seen on the chart down below, is we are going to do a Cat 1 ILS approach. That's 304. We'll plug that in, and you can also use barometric or radio, which is 200. Let's check this. Okay, we need to start our descent. We are a little bit late, no worries. Aircraft will probably be okay with descending. 3 miles is not a huge deal. Okay, let's go back to the performance page. This guy here. So we fill this information, and the other one is, if I open this back up, 200, that is the decision height. Decision altitude is barometric, decision height is radial altimeter, which is above ground level, and this is above sea level. That information is in there, and the last thing is the landing configuration. To be able to do that, we need to go to the calculator, hit the landing, put KLAX here, enter that, and then we request the METAR information. We also need to know the runway length for KLAX. We'll open the chart list, go to taxi, airport information. We are landing to 25 left, and the length is 3,382 meters. We'll plug this into runway LDA, 3,382. And then the approach speed, according to our FMC, or MCDU rather, let's close this up, is 135 V approach. So we will plug that in there, 133, and we can hit calculate now. Runway is dry, runway heading is 259er, according to the chart, which I can show again. If I close this chart and go to our approach plate, final approach course, which is also our runway heading, is 251. I'm sorry, not 259. 251. Altitude of the runway is again here, and that is going to be 98. So we will plug that in there, 98 feet of elevation, and then we will hit calculate. So as you see, if we set our auto brakes to low, we will stop at 2,500 meters, which is more than enough for what we need. So let's go down, and one thing, we are landing with config 3. We are not landing with full flaps because we have enough runway to land with flaps 3 instead of full flaps, so keep that in mind, okay? Alright, so we'll press this, it will change it to config 3, and we are set for our approach page. Alright, let's go back to progress page. Now we can track the distance to KLAX by plugging it in here. Very nice. So we'll keep it there. We are coming down to 27,000, and according to and we can see the constraints by pressing this button here. That will display the constraints on the ND. So we passed Bruin, and if you take a look at the chart again to make a little bit visual talk. Alright, that's where we are. We are well below 3300 and 24, so we can now go back to 19,000 for the altitude selector. Press that. We should have no problems meeting this restriction because we are about to hit 24,000, as you see there, and we shouldn't have any problems to get below 24,000. From there we will set for 10,000, and we will wait for the aircraft to descend further. We are below 26,000, so the aircraft automatically switch from max speed to indicated airspeed. If you don't do this, it does it for you automatically. What we forgot is to set the speed to 280. While I was speaking, we just breached that speed restriction, but you know what to do when you are flying this to practice that. I was speaking a lot, and that makes it hard to stay on top of things. And remember, this is usually done by 2 people in the cockpit in real life, and I don't have a co-pilot with me, so I have to take care of everything myself. It's a little bit windy. We have 53-54 knots of crosswind coming from 3 to 1, so that's why you see the aircraft jumping. but we are below 24,000, so we will meet that restriction no problem. Now we can set the altitude to 10,000 and press the up arrow one more time, so that will set the aircraft to descend down to 10,000. I don't think we need this anymore, but we will need the chart for the approach. Couple things we need to check here is the frequency and the final approach course. 109er, decimal 9er, and 251. If we go down and check the radio navigation page, ILS LAX 109er 90, and final course is 251, which is already here. All looking good now, and what's left to us is to monitor the descent and make sure we are not going to breach any of the restrictions, and hope that this wind and the turbulence will go away. This is coming from Microsoft's latest sim update. They overdid the turbulence and it's impacting the aircraft badly, unfortunately. That's why it's jumping like this. And the fly-by-wire team is working on a fix to fix that issue and address this problem, hopefully in the coming days. Beautiful views outside. We are nicely descending. This is an above restriction, so we should be able to meet this and stay above 17,000. And then we will monitor our distance to LAX by going back to progress page. 70 miles, and we should plan for our approach when we get close to our transition waypoint of Cebu. Alright, everything is looking nice. We didn't breach that restriction, so that's good. The next one is 15,000, which we should be able to hit and pass, no problems. When you look down below on the PFD, you see magenta text saying Alt. This means we have a flight level 130 restriction. This is our transition, and if we check the flight plan page, the aircraft is planning for Cebu, passing Cebu at 13,000, where we have a 14 and 12,000 restriction, between 14 and 12,000. And then from there, crane, and then our approach has also restrictions: 9,000, 8,000, 7,500, 3,600, and then eventually 1,900, which is the altitude that we need to descend down to capture the glide slope on our final. Okay. It's warning us to switch to the local barometric pressure. Local barometric pressure, if you remember, is 3006 from the metal report here. We will set that for the LAX 3006 and leave it like that. You can also do this by pressing the B key, which will set the barometric pressure, which didn't make any difference after I pressed because it's the same. Alright, we didn't breach 17,000 restriction, or 15,000 restriction, I'm sorry. So now we have a 14,270 knots, so let's slow down to 270. And we will keep the open speed or selected speed on descent until we hit our approach. Couple things to note here to stay ahead of the game. If you look at performance page, there is an activate approach phase button here. We will do this when we hit our transition waypoint of Cebu, where we transition from our arrival into our approach, and that will set the aircraft for approach, and it's gonna respect the calculated approach speed. Sorry about that. Didn't expect this to happen, so let's just change the frequency and get away from that frequency. I'm not using ATC at all, so that was just random because I was randomly on that frequency for some reason. Anyway, let's keep monitoring, right? We are coming down to 13,000 at Cebu and our transition waypoint, where we need to activate our approach in the MCDU after passing here. And also we need to think about turning the landing lights on, getting close to crane. Looks like we are going to be very close for that restriction. Aircraft will probably level off. As you see, that's magenta text at 13,000, and we are not going to descend below that. And as you see, speed and altitude constraint is highlighted here, telling us that aircraft is going to descend, but now it's at a restriction where it cannot. And the descent mode is down below, armed to go when we clear that restriction. Alright. Looks like we did clear that restriction, not so much according to the ND, but aircraft started to descend again. And we are descending down to crane. And as we know, below 10,000 we need to stay at or below 250 knots. So let's slow down to 250 knots now. And this is all done to stay ahead of the game when you are getting used to the aircraft. You can wait and do this when you are very close to crane, if you like to do it that way. Right now the aircraft will level off at 10,000, and then we will select the altitude and go below that when we get to crane. Something's wrong with the vertical speed, not sure. Okay, now it's managed. That dot means that it's managed by the autopilot. Somehow when you select the altitude, vertical speed is engaged automatically, so you need to be careful to make sure you have a dot here and aircraft is managing the descent. Otherwise, I think that might be the reason why we didn't level off at 13,000 and kept that restriction. Yeah, I didn't catch that earlier, but all good. It was just very close, so no worries there. We are getting close to 10,000 and hopefully we will be there. And now we can, from here, I think we can safely go down to 1,900, and this ring here will going to let you select between 100 increments or 1,000 increments to set the altitude, which is now set for our approach. Alright, past 10,000, let's turn the landing lights on. During approach and landing, nose wheel light comes to taxi only, not to takeoff, and the runway turn-off lights are optional and pilot's discretion. We'll turn that. We'll turn the seatbelt signs on, and we need to get a couple things ready here. We need to arm the speed brakes. We need to set our auto brakes as low, and we need to turn on the landing system. Landing system will give you two indicators, vertical and horizontal. One of them is for the glide slope, the vertical one, and the horizontal one is for the localizer. Right now we are tuned for the approach. We can leave the speed control to aircraft now and hit that. And what we forgot is activating the approach mode. If you don't, aircraft will do it for you, which it did for us. Again, I was speaking a lot and skipped and missed Sivu and activating this, but it's also automatic. If you forget, aircraft will do it for you. So we can go back to managed speed, and as you see, as we turn the managed speed, we have the approach speed of 149 here. We need to update our landing performance and set that to 149 and recalculate to make sure we are going to be able to stop with the low brake setting, which we are. At 20 miles to KLAX, we should expect to pick the ILS signal roughly in 9 nautical miles, and it's between 25 and 20 knots, 25 and 20 miles. You should see the ILS signal displayed here, and you will see ILS, KLAX, and the frequency displayed right here on the PFD. When that happens, and as you see, aircraft is following the restrictions just fine, It's going to level off at 7,000 to meet that restriction, and then it will keep descending to 5,000 and so on and so forth, which is all great. And now, because it sensed that it's not gonna breach that restriction, now it's the 5,000, our next waypoint, set as an altitude restriction for the autopilot to keep an eye on that. Alright, so now we are at 220. As you see, aircraft is monitoring and managing the speed. When we pick the ILS signal, that means we are at 20 miles, airport is right in front of us. And when we start to pick, we can turn the localizer mode on, because this is sort of a straight-in approach, and that's why we can do that. As you see here, that's straight into the runway. If you have to turn to intercept the localizer, I don't recommend turning the localizer on too early, because that will drift you off your flight plan and the aircraft will try to capture the signal. Alright, coming up, we are 23 miles away from LAX, so probably in 2 miles we should see the ILS signal. Also, we will go flaps 1 at 20 miles and wait for the 10-mile final to deploy the landing gear and go flaps 2, and then we will go flaps 3 right before we capture the glide slope and keep flaps 3 until landing. One thing you need to remember, if you are not doing a full flap landing, you need to turn the landing flap 3 on for the ground proximity warning system. Otherwise, the ground proximity warning system will start screaming at you if it senses that you are not landing with full flaps. So keep this in mind when you are landing with flaps 3, okay? So that's turned on now. Everything else looks great. And the other thing is, because we are about to enter into a critical phase of the flight, we can go to ignition start to have continuous ignition in case of losing an engine and needing to start. As you see, now we started to pick the ILS signal, 18 miles to KLAX. We can now hit the localizer. Aircraft will now align itself with the center of the runway and will go flaps 1 at this point. When you go flaps 1, aircraft will start slowing down to the next flap speed, and we are going to wait for 10-mile final for LAX to go flaps 2 and drop the landing gear. Alright, let's drop the range one more time, and our final waypoint to capture the glide slope is Gigi, I believe. As you see here, 1900. That's where we expect to capture the glide slope. Okay, so we are coming down to Honda and Gigi is right there. Now you see the glide slope indicator and the localizer diamonds are here. They are now sort of blank, or it's not filled, but now we are descending down to 1900 and we can go flaps 2 now, which will make the aircraft slow down further. This is all to stay ahead of the game, and as you see, we have traffic and it's turned to red because there is a collision risk. Let's go and see if we can spot that aircraft somewhere here. Well, I don't see anything, but the traffic screen is showing that. So that's maybe I'm flying offline group only and it's coming from somewhere else. Alright, we need to keep descending. For some reason we are not, but maybe that's just a restriction. And we are above the glide slope now. We should come down to it shortly. We are at 10-mile final. Alright. Now the aircraft started descending a little bit faster after slowing down, so we should let it descend to 1900 before deploying the landing gear and going flaps 3. Just getting ready for that and planning ahead. So we'll now turn the approach mode on And as you see, the aircraft automatically captured the glide slope for us. Even we are not at the waypoint to capture that. This is probably due to us being on profile for a long time, and the aircraft will manage to get there, and this diamond will center here. That's the right radio altimeter reading. We are below 2500 now, and now as you see, glide slope is again highlighted, and the aircraft will get down, and now it's captured. It's green, it's captured, we are on profile, we are descending down. Let's drop the landing gear. Gear is coming down. Beautiful animation. Alright, landing gear is down, and things will happen very fast. This is the outer marker of the localizer that you are hearing, that beep. It will go flaps full now, and will inform the cabin for landing.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.
Okay, and everything is now green. We are configured for landing, and we are just waiting for our minimums to take control and disengage the autopilot. We can now set our missed approach altitude according to our chart. It's 3000. Information is at the top. Missed approach climb to 2000 on heading 251 until crossing SMO VOR, then left turn heading. Okay, that's 2000, not 3. Let's correct that. That's our missed approach altitude set, and we are ready to land, guys. Hopefully this will be a good landing, and the aircraft will manage it for us until to the point where we are ready to take control. Monitoring the altimeter, 304 is our minimums. Remember, that's when I'm going to take control. Sorry about the stutters. This is my computer trying to load the scenery of LAX, which is quite heavy, so that's why it jumped a little bit, but hopefully it will be alright from now on. Alright, let's see how good or how bad this landing will be. Approaching our minimums now. We are still on the glide slope, and the localizer 500 call is checked. 400 checked, and the land is highlighted as you see here. We are getting to our minimums. 300 is checked. 200 checked. Minimums checked. My plane, and we are landing. 100 passing the threshold. We will hear the inner marker 50, as you see. 40, we'll now 30, 20 retard. Right, we will retard and let her put the wheels down nicely. 5. There we go. Nose wheel is down. We will activate the reversers, and we are looking for 60 knots airspeed to disengage the reverse thrust. We are below 80. At this point, do not hit your brakes. It will cancel the auto braking. So just let the aircraft do its thing. 60 knots. We will disengage the reversers now. Reversers are disengaged, and we will use this high speed exit to vacate the runway. Alright, let's give her just a little bit throttle to get out of the runway. And that's the brakes that stopped us. If you saw, it was highlighted, and until I tapped the brakes it was also engaged. Okay, we vacated the runway. Let's stop here to clean the aircraft, and then we will taxi to a gate. You can also do this while you are taxiing, but for the video I'd like to stop here and clean up the aircraft. Landing lights will come off. Runway turn off lights, we don't need it. Nose wheel light will stay at taxi. Strobe can go back to auto, and we'll scroll down. Now we can turn off the TCAS system and transponder to auto. Predictive wind shear we can turn off, and we can turn off the weather radar. And obviously we will clean the flaps and go back to normal ignition for the engines. Now we are ready to taxi to our gate. Let's keep going, and also let's turn that off. And now we are ready. So we can chime the cabin for the crew to get ready for deboarding the aircraft and letting the passengers out. Alright, that's good enough. And we will keep this taxiway. We'll take that right turn, probably from here or the next one, to go to and park somewhere over there. That is the plan. We are now about to cross a runway, so to make sure there is no traffic on approach, you can keep the TCAS system on. I'm not sure if it will display, and it's stuttering because of the scenery. Let's check. No aircraft, no aircraft. We are passing, no problems. And we can slow down a little bit. We are a little bit faster than I like. Let's turn TCAS back off, and we'll keep going, and we'll park towards our left. Be careful, officer, aircraft is coming. Alright, we'll take this turn like so, and then we will take this left turn and find ourselves a parking spot over here. I think we can park towards right. It's quite empty, no issues whatsoever. So we will use this next, and we can also go right too. We'll do left. We'll do this parking spot right here. Slow down, and before you go in there, make sure you turn off your taxi light to not to blind anybody. A little bit wide turn, but we'll get back on it. Just a little bit of throttle, and we are now ready to park our aircraft. One thing I forgot is to start the APU. Do that earlier than this, so that you have APU available when you are parked. Let's go and change our view a little bit and see how good I will be able to stop and how close. I think that's good enough. Let's see. It's a little bit different. No, not still good enough. And as you see, the cockpit, when you line the cockpit up with that red line or edge of that red line, I think it's the right parking position. We can test that out, but I'm gonna cheat and stay at the external view to get there. Just a little bit of throttle. There we go. There she moves, and we will park just like that. And my assumption was correct. Okay, let's look there if we can see it. Can we see it? Yeah, barely. So that might be a good indicator of where to park. Right now what we need to do is we need to turn on the parking brake and check the APU. APU is available now. We can turn the bleed on, and let's make sure it's available by going to the APU page here. Yep, it's available, which is good. Now we are ready to turn off the engines. We can turn off the constraints, landing system, flight director off, and from here what we need to do is start with engine number 1, turn it off. Oh, it's stuttering badly, and I have speed brakes stuck for some reason. Alright, engine number 1 is now turned off. Let's go back and do the same for engine number 2. Now that engine is also shut, and Microsoft Flight Simulator thinks we are done, but we are not done. We will be shortly. Right, now this engine is also turned off, and we are ready to call the gate and let our passengers out. Let's call the gate. And this jetways, it's an add-on that I grabbed recently, so if you don't have the same jetway at LAX, that's probably why. And these sounds and lights are coming with that. We'll turn the beacon off, and we'll turn the nav and logo lights and strobe to off as well. Okay, couple things I forgot, but as I said, remember, this is done by 2 people in real life, and I'm just by myself trying to, you know, do this. Alright, that's the jetway now connected to the aircraft, and we can also call for a ground power unit and wait for that to connect. It's now available. We can go to external power, turn off the APU bleed, and turn off the APU. That is now our flight completed. I don't know if fly-by-wire team has an option to let the passengers out. No, so we will leave here and say you guys goodbye. Oh, there's another aircraft parked next to us. Interesting. Alright guys, welcome to LAX. I hope you enjoyed this 3-part tutorial series about Airbus A320 and how to do a full flight. If you are a channel subscriber, thanks for your subscription. If you are not a subscriber and stumbled upon this video and enjoyed what you have seen, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to get notified for future episodes, and that also helps this video to reach out to more flight simmers, and you are helping them and the channel as well tremendously by doing that. Thanks for being here with me in this tutorial and watching it till the end, and I will be seeing you in the next one.